Welcome to Not Suitable for Work. I'm your host, Peter C. Diamond. You think your office is nuts? Wait until you hear some of these stories.
It's a story I tell people as a cautionary tale of what not to do in a pressure-filled situation.
And there's nothing like making a joke and looking at a room full of people who, are just stone-faced, and they know that you blew it.
Week 2 in a new job, and I'm in a penthouse hot tub suite with my 2 half-naked coworkers and 3 girls from the New York office.
Face it, people don't always bring their best self to work. Instead, they walk through the doors each morning emboldened by ego, power, arrogance, stupidity, and gossip. This is why tempers flare and situations escalate. It's bound to happen when people are crowded together all day long, in tight quarters, under stress, with no fresh air and limited sunlight. It's the perfect recipe to heighten everyone's crazy. I spent over 20 years in advertising and experienced firsthand an endless parade of amusing characters and situations that would keep me entertained. That's partly why I stayed in the business for so long. It was never dull. Now I'm an executive coach and help people make sense of the nonsense. With each podcast, I'll interview folks who have a humorous work story to share, just like friends kibitzing over coffee or a craft cocktail. Along the way, I'll offer tidbits of advice to help you make sense of your own office dysfunction. Don't worry, no careers were harmed in making Not Suitable for Work. Names and places were changed to protect the not so innocent. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So I've been the new boss many times throughout my career. Frankly, it kind of sucks. Especially when you're starting at a new job. I'd be starting at a new job and I'm trying to get the lay of the land, figure out who's who can I trust, how do things work, how cool should I try and be? All right. Okay, I'll be honest with you. Nobody would ever mistake me for trying to be the cool boss. I always erred on being the responsible boss, doing the right thing, striving to make a good first impression, especially with upper management. My goal, quite frankly, my goal in life is always to avoid any type of unnecessary conflict. And in this episode, a new boss quickly finds himself on the hot seat. After just 2 weeks on the job, his reputation is on the line when a sequence of events involving his new direct reports don't quite add up. Wanting to be seen as the cool new boss overrides a nagging suspicion that things aren't quite what they seem. And that's when things unravel fast.
I'm excited to tell you my story. It's, I'll be honest, it's a story that happened a while ago. And I sort of put it out of my memory because it was a kind of a horrible experience, but albeit funny. But when you and I started to chat, I started to recall the events of the story, and I actually have been cracking myself up over it. Nearly 20 years later, so it's kind of been a fun journey to revisit the whole thing. So
I think
I'm excited.
Those are some of the best stories to hear, and hopefully there's not too much PTSD that you're going to be getting as you as you recall the story. But I'll be here to kind of help you through it, man.
No. Although I am sitting by a window at the second story, so hopefully I don't just jump out the window halfway through the story.
Keep the window closed. Keep the window closed.
Yeah, the window's closed. Okay. So I'm going to take you back. Okay, I'm going to take you back a bit. So this story occurred in the late '90s. I had just left a 10-year gig in Chicago, and I moved out west to San Francisco. And I was working at a very new office of a large, well-known New York creative agency. It was a great move for me. I went from being a VP to an SVP. I had more accounts and more people reporting to me. I was living in the city that, at that time, was on fire. This was right around the dot-com boom, and San Francisco was the place to be. And my husband got a great job there working for one of the biggest employers in town. So everything was life seemed to be just grand. It was an awesome time to be alive. So I'm in week 2 of this job, and time for my first business trip to New York. And the purpose was a pre-production meeting, and I was working on an apparel account. And so what I thought I would do is I would go for the pre-pro, and I would use the time in New York, extend my visit, and go to the New York office and meet some of the senior executives that I needed to meet.
Okay.
I hadn't met them.
Hey, Paul. So just to set the stage a little bit for some of the listeners. So you're working at an advertising agency, and a pre-pro meeting these are the meetings that set up an advertising shoot, correct? About
commercial. Yes. So pre-pro stands for pre-production. And we were basically shooting commercials for a client. And a pre-pro or pre-production meeting is where everybody gets together, the agency, the client, the producer, the talent, and we talk about how the shoot's going to go. So
there's maybe, 10 or so people in this pre-production meeting?
I think that's about a good number. Yeah, it could be 10, anywhere between 10 and 15 people. Yeah. So accompanying me on this trip were two guys who worked for me on the account. One was a director and one was a junior account executive, right? So I get on an early afternoon flight from SFO to JFK, and I head to my hotel in Midtown New York. It was the Royalton. It's still there. Up on 43rd Street. It's a very hot hotel at the time. Very, very, very busy. It's still there, but it's kind of been eclipsed by other sort of hotter new entries, right? So I get to the hotel around 9 o'clock at night. This is the night before the pre-pro. And I expect to just go to my room, go to my bed, go to bed, right? My coworkers had taken an earlier flight. So I get there, and when I check in at the front desk, they give me a key. They said, "You're staying in the penthouse." And I'm like, "I'm in the penthouse?" They said, "Yes, it's a 3-bedroom penthouse, and you and your party were moved to that room." And I'm like,
So a 3-bedroom penthouse.
A 3-bedroom penthouse, and they had told me that my party, the two guys that worked for me, Mark and Dave, not their real names, trying to protect the innocent, they said that our party would be in the penthouse. And I said, do I have my own bedroom? They're like, "It's a 3-bedroom penthouse. You're going to be there." And I was like, I was like, "Fine. Okay, give me the key." Right?
And no. What's interesting is, there was a time, probably a little bit, this is the end of the golden era of advertising where you did, stay.
Where stuff like that happened, this was before. So, in 2002, 2003, everything changed, right? Like expenses, were tightened up, executives were flying, cheap flights. But yeah, this was still when crazy shit like this happened, where you flew first class and you drank expensive champagne and occasionally you'd stay in a penthouse, right? So I didn't think too much of it, and I just, I still knew, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So I took my key, and I confirmed, as long as I had our own bedrooms, I was fine. So I get up there, I get off the elevator in the penthouse floor, and there is definitely a party going on somewhere. I hear music. So I put the key in the door, and I getting close to the door. I'm like, "There's parties in my penthouse, right?" So I open the door, music's blasting. There are open bottles of booze on the dining room table. There's some leftover pizza and fries sitting on one of those rolly things that room service brings in, right? And so I turn the corner into kind of the main room, and there are Mark and Dave, my two coworkers. They're both they have towels around their waist, and they're both shirtless. And I'm like, okay, why are you guys in towels? Why do you not have shirts on? So they just gotten out of the hot tub.
There's a hot tub in the penthouse.
There's a hot tub in the center of the main gathering room of this penthouse.
Wait, right? In the center of the.
It's in the center of. It's in the center. It's the centerpiece of the room. It's like a hot tub room.
This sounds like something that should be in a bad Vegas hotel or something.
Yeah. But it wasn't in the bathroom. It was in the.
Oh no, it's not in the bathroom. It's in the middle of the suite. Of course, that makes sense. Yeah. It's in the middle.
It's in the middle of the suite, right? and there were 3 other women in the hot tub, right? And again, it's a pretty big hot tub, so kind of an indoor room. So I get introduced to the women, who I find out they're employees of our New York office. So they work for the same company. They work in the New York office, and they happen to be friends of Mark and Dave's, right? So I'm asking these guys, I'm like, hey, what's this all about, right? So Mark, who is the senior of the two coworkers, he's the director. He tells me that he asked about the penthouse when they got there. They found that it was available, and he said it was just a little bit more than 3 separate rooms. So he had us all rebooked into the penthouse. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how did they just rebook me without asking me? And I'm like, but again, I'm just like, whatever, I'm just going with it. So he said he coordinated this through our department assistant back in San Francisco, so it was all handled legit. So I said, okay, sounds good to me. I'm like, what's the plan? I was thinking, maybe we just go to bed and, I would just put in some earplugs. But I was a new boss, right? And so this was my chance to be like the cool new boss, right? So I threw my bags in my bedroom and I came out and I made myself a drink and I joined the conversation. And I thought, I'm like, should I go in the hot tub? I'm like, I don't have a swimsuit. I'm not going in my underwear. But the guys had swimsuits, which I thought, again, I'm like, so why they travel to New York in swimsuits? But again, I'm starting to feel like this was more of a planned thing, but I'm just not. I just don't want to introduce bad energy, so I let it go.
So you're like, this is week 2? Like how?
It's week 2.
So it's week two in a new job, and
I'm in week 2 in a new job, and I'm in a penthouse hot tub suite
with your shirtless,
my 2 half naked coworkers and 3 girls from the New York office. All right. So Mark says, after I say, hey, what's the plan? He's like, let's go out. It's just a pre-pro. We really don't have to do anything. It's all the producer and the director. We just take a few notes. And Peter, he's sort of right. Like, we were account people. The role of an account person in a pre-pro is not critical.
You're there to handhold. You're there to make sure anything goes off the rails.
You're there to handle difficult questions. You're there to, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going with this, right? I'm just going with it. So we go outside, and so we walk to this legendary place in Midtown that was, you might remember it. I think, Peter, you were living in New York at this time. Part of the club kid craze of like the 80s and 90s. It's called the Kit Kat Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you've heard it. I mean, it's legendary, right? It's closed now, but it's on 43rd Street near Times Square, so just like a couple of blocks from our hotel. So we go in there, and, it was total, like, party monster, like, club kid 90s kind of stuff. I do not fit in at all. But this is like the Limelight Roxy era in New York, if you can kind of picture that, right?
I remember it well.
You remember it well? Yeah, I do, too. I mean, I used to go to New York that time all the time. So the interesting fact about the Kit Kat Club, did you know that that's where Donald Trump met Melania?
No way.
That is exactly right. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, that's great. That's a nice little piece of tidbit. Yeah.
A good little storytelling tidbit, right?
Exactly.
So this was the kind of place for Peter, this, but for the listeners, this is the kind of place that had sort of like performance art, like lots of different rooms, one main room, lots of different little rooms you could go and kind of do whatever, right? But it was really weird kind of shit, right? So we get there after midnight. We're pretty drunk. I'm not going to say like we're stumbling, but we've been drinking, right? And the place was packed. So
and are the 3 women from the New York office with you?
Yes, they are. Yes. So we all go there together. All 6 of us. Yes, we all go there together. But we very quickly lost each other. You go into a big club like that and people just sort of peel off, right? So so we get there, and this whole thing is kind of a blur, but I do remember one of the acts. There was an act on the main stage. There was this like, heroin chic, like thin, tall guy and very skimpy, like, briefs, really pretty toned and pretty lean, but he had wings on him. And when he turned around, you could see that the wings were actually sewn like right into his back. Like the wings were sewn into his skin, which like totally made me cringe, right? And he did some kind of
like really, really sewn into his skin.
So they were, yeah. But I mean, again, that's what I remember, but it was dark and I was drunk, so it probably wasn't the case. But that was what I remember about it. And I remember telling people after that, there was this guy there with wings sewn into his back. So who the hell knows if it's even true? So he did some kind of dance, like more like a spiritual thing. But then he went off stage for a bit. I'm like, that was an odd performance. It really wasn't much, right? So then a few other stage people come back out on the stage, and they drop about like 25 to 30 stuffed animals on the stage, and then they leave. And then all of a sudden you hear this big motor, and it's the same guy in the wings, and he comes out with a lawnmower, and he just like mows down all the stuffed animals with the lawnmower. And there's like all this like animal fur flying around. I remember getting hit with a piece of like stuffed animal fur, and this whole thing is just like so stupid and so crazy, right? So I wound up losing my party. I got back to the hotel about like 5 a.m. Just enough time to take a little nap. I'm not quite sure I was in the club the whole time, and you're just kind of going around and drinking, and but so I get back at 5 a.m. just in time to take a little nap, get some coffee, and wake the other guys up. And they were in the room. We all got up. We made it to the pre-pro. We had lunch after. Following that, my coworkers are like, dude, we're going back to the room. We're so tired. Last night was epic. Blah 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 blah. We only had to meet the client for dinner that night, so the afternoon was kind of free. So they went back and napped. I used that time to go to the office because remember I said I was going to meet with people that I needed to meet with. So I went to the New York office. I'm dragging at this point, but I'm hiding it pretty well. And because I'm really not a stranger to New York all-nighters. I mean, I've spent time in New York. I'm from there, so I can make it through the day. But like the next night, I'm gonna like collapse, right? So I'm doing okay. But I really need to put on performance. Like I'm making a good impression. I'm 2 weeks into this job. I can't be like dragging around the office or canceling meetings I have set up. So I'm plugging through it, right? So right around 4:30. So we have to meet our clients at like 6:30 for dinner. So right around 4:30, the CEO of the company finds me. He runs into me and he's like, can you come by my office in like 10 minutes, before you leave?
And you're like, no.
No. I actually didn't think anything of it because he was, I was basically reporting into the guy reporting into him. I was just 2 reports away from him, and he was, he was a creative guy that he came up through the chief creative officer track, not the sort of account track, and he was kind of quiet. Nice guy. So I wasn't threatened by that at all, but I'm like, maybe he just wants to, welcome me, see how I'm doing, whatever. So I go to his office in about 10 minutes, and the CFO is there. Now, the CFO is the complete opposite. He's like a big, bald dude with thick glasses. He's like total mafia guy, super thick New York accent, which I later learned he was honed through like growing up in the Bronx. So the meeting was very cordial. You know how like most CEOs and ad agencies, they have their desk, but then they have a whole little like living room area with like a sofa and a couple of chairs and a coffee table. And so we go over to like the seating area, and they're sitting down each in a chair, and I sit on the sofa, and I feel like we're going to have a little coffee clutch, like it's going to be, a great, I'm like, here I am, I'm talking to the CEO, I'm talking to the CFO, I'm sitting in this awesome office. I've got like a corner office view of like, the Upper East Side. I could see the Chrysler building out the window, right? And so we started to make a little small talk, they asked me how my visit was going, how I like the company so far, stuff like that. So the CFO chimes in, and he looks at me, but he's still kind of friendly. He's like, hey, Paul. He's like, so how's that hotel? I'm like, it's fine. He's
oh
like,
my God.
He's like, you got a nice room. Yeah. He's like, you just wait, right? He's like, you got a nice room up there at that hotel? I'm like, yeah. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what is going on here? Like, I feel like this is about to get super ugly. So he's like, Paul said, I just got one simple question for you. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, so now at this point, like picture this is a horror movie, right? And picture like there's a really, really nice guy with a nice face, and all of a sudden like the music turns to like horror music, and the guy like he does a face pull, right? And there's like this monster underneath that's about to like reach and grab a vein out of your neck, right? And so then he says to me, he looks at me, he's like, Paul, one question. He's like, what the fuck are you, Mark, and Dave staying in the fucking penthouse of the fucking Royalton Hotel on our fucking money? I mean, like, literally just like that. Like is this going to be good for your podcast, by the way?
It'll get an explicit rating, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. So no, because that's what he actually, I mean, literally, it was just like that. And so I'm like, so I'm trying to explain to him, like, look, I don't know what's going on here. I said, but I arrived late. I was given a key. I was told it was the same price as 3 rooms. And I said, he goes, well, it's not the same price as 3 rooms. He's like, that room is $1,500 more a night than 3 rooms. And you jokers are staying there for 2 fucking nights. And so I'm like, that's not what I was told. It's not, it's not what my coworkers told me. It's like, well, they lied to you. He goes, you didn't question them? You didn't get more information? He's like, you believe everything everyone tells you? He's like, you're an SVP. Where's your fucking brain? And so at this point, I'm like, oh my God, what is happening here? How did I get in the...
I'm like getting ajna just listening, because I can put myself in that situation. Like I can hear it.
So it's funny now. It is funny to think about it because it was a long time ago. But this one, I'm like, what? I'm like in my head. I'm like, what's going on here? Please don't fire me. So there's no way I'm going to be able to explain that.
I was going to say, and you can't at this point.
My career's over. Like literally, I'm like, don't fire me. My career's going to be over. I'll never survive this, right?
And you can't. It's not like you can try and defend your way out of it or make excuses or try and justify it. I mean, it's just done. It's just like it's. Yeah. All you can do is kind of like put your tail between your legs and just sit there quietly.
Yes, I took responsibility, right? So I'm like, look, I'm responsible for this. This happened on my watch. I'll make it better. I'll be responsible for the extra money. I said, you just got to give me some time to figure out what actually happened, right? So then the CFO turns to the CEO and he has this sort of smug chuckle and he points to me and he's talking to the CEO. He's like, do you believe this guy? He goes, you think you're doing us a favor? He says, you don't get to figure out what happened. He goes, this isn't in your hands. He's like, this is in HR hands. He's like, they're going to conduct an investigation. They're definitely going to interview those 3 girls who basically have told everyone in this whole agency about your epic night. Basically, it's the 3 girls were just talking, and then apparently it just made it around the whole agency and made it into the C-suite.
So the girls ratted you out.
The girls ratted us out, right? So wait, this is about to get even better. So he starts going off on it's like, so he goes, and you know who else we're going to interview? He goes, we're going to interview. He goes, I bet you guys have some hookers up there. He goes, do you guys have some hookers up there? He goes, yeah, maybe we're going to interview those hookers. He goes, how many do you have? He goes, you have 3, you each have 1. Do you guys share your hookers? And I mean, he's going on with this hooker thing. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this my punishment or your fantasy? Stop talking about hookers. There were no hookers up there. And then starts, what's that?
So what's the CEO doing? So the CFO clearly is taking the reins. Is the CEO kind of laughing or?
No, he's not. The CEO is just sitting there. You, by the way, know who the CEO is because this is a company that you know, Peter. He's just sitting there. The guy says the CFO is being a huge bully and is just talking. He's like, he got some hookers up there. Maybe we'll interview those hookers. And then he says, he got the phone number for those hookers. He goes, I bet you guys are doing some blow too. He goes, you got the phone number for your cocaine dealer? And I'm just this is not happening to me right now. He's accusing me of having hookers and cocaine, and I owe him $3,000, and there's an investigation, and I'm like, my career is over. Literally, my career is over. I'm seeing my life flash before me. I'm how am I? My husband's going to divorce me.
I'm gonna have to move back in with my mom.
I'm not going to make it through this. I'm not going to make it through this, right? So I said, okay, so. I'm okay, so there's an investigation here. I said, for the record, I said, there are no hookers and there's no cocaine. I said, but you guys are going to do an investigation. So I said, what's my next step? And the CFO says, well, your next step is to figure out how you, Mark, and Dave are going to get me $3,000 for the extra cost of that room. And I'm okay. I said, that's what I'm going to do. And they're like, you can go now. So I left. I still have a job at this point, which is great. I go back to the penthouse, and the guy is still there, and I'm like, you guys, you're gonna have no idea what just happened to me. And I explained to them, and the young kid was very frightened. He's like, holy shit. He goes, are we all getting fired? And I'm like, but the middle guy, Mark, the director, he's like didn't seem fazed. He kind of laughed at it. He's like, look, let them talk to everybody. He's like, they're gonna do an investigation and talk to people, find out what we were told, and we didn't do anything wrong. There was a mix-up. He goes, we'll be fine. He goes, don't worry about it. He goes, by the way, we got to get to dinner right now, so let's just go to dinner. So we go to dinner with the clients, and I'm just like, I can't get this out of my head, right? So we have a nice dinner with the clients. The next day we get on the plane and go back to San Francisco. So early the following week, they had done their investigation, and they had concluded, and basically what they found out was this guy, Mark, the director, was behind all of this. He had planned this. He had booked this penthouse well ahead of time. He had involved our group assistant. Somehow, the fact that it was expensive never got flagged in the system. I mean, I don't think back then systems weren't like...
They weren't that sophisticated.
Like today, if you did that, your CFO would know in a second that you were booking a room outside of your policy, right? But back then, that didn't happen, right? So he planned this whole thing, right? He lied to our assistant about me approving it. And so I was basically, so that was good news for me because apparently they had talked to everybody. They talked to our travel agent. They talked to my assistant. They talked to everybody, and they figured out that he basically concocted this whole thing and made it happen and didn't involve any of us. So the good news is I was completely cleared. And I was told basically we were going to terminate him. But when we called him in to terminate him, he basically resigned. And he had already had a job offer. And, you know, at the end of the day, what he told me, he's like, look, I just wanted to go out with a bang. So he wanted to have a good bit of fun at this company. He knew all along he was going to leave, and he wanted to just go out and be crazy and have some crazy fun. And so, you know, I got to keep my job. I got a minor hand slap. The only thing that I got out of this was like, you know, poor judgment. Like, you know, you shouldn't have gone out with your staff. You probably should have stayed in the night before a client meeting. But other than that, I kind of got through this, you know, relatively unscathed. And the company basically took $3,000 out of his last paycheck.
Really? So he had to pay up basically. So he
basically, because I told him I asked my management, like, what should I do about the money? They're like, we're gonna take it out of Mark's paycheck, so don't worry about it. So I was cleared.
So going out with he had to pay for his going out with a bang, basically.
Basically, they just took it out of his last paycheck. They're like, you owe us. You were responsible for this. You owe us money. They took it out of his paycheck. I mean, I wasn't there for that conversation with him. That was a HR conversation, but they told me that I didn't need to worry about the money. So that's my story. And so, you know, like, I think what I have since learned, this was actually a very, you know, a pivotal story because I've since learned to question things. If something feels like it's too good to be true, like it probably is. And to just be a little more of a responsible kind of leader and know where to draw the line with respect to hanging out with coworkers and when to call it quits. And, you know, and since then I just, you know, I'm a lot more like, you know, I might go out for a drink and go in early. I'm very comfortable leaving people, and being the grown up and going to bed as opposed to trying to be the cool boss and going with the flow. So that was sort of, so this experience was, you know, it teach me that at least.
Yeah, no, I think it's also hard, right? You're 2 weeks in at a new agency, and so it's, you know, it's hard to also get the quick, you know, to be able to grasp all that's happening that quickly, and you want to have some level of trust with the people that you're now working with. So if they say, hey, it's the same price, you want to at least be able to believe them and trust them and kind of start from that vantage point. And unfortunately, just someone who was just, being egregious and taking advantage of the situation. But I also, one of the things I think I did learn as well toward the end of my kind of days in the advertising business is, I would, I'd go out for a drink or two, and then I just was like, you know what, I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to be around it, and so you guys stay, have a good time. I'm heading home. So I totally understand that, and I think that is also very, wise advice.
Yeah, I will tell you, this happened 20 years ago, and I say in the past 20 years, I have definitely. I think just naturally, as you get, quite frankly, you get older and you develop more of a life, you just don't really want to do it anymore, and you just get tired. But I have never seen a senior executive, stay out late with, coworkers either after a Christmas party or a summer party or something. I've never seen that be a good thing.
It's never a good thing.
I've never seen it be a good thing, and yet people do it. It's just a formula for a potential unraveling. And again, I got super lucky. Like, I got really lucky. And when I think about sitting in the room and I think about the CFO yelling at me about hookers and blow, I'm just like, it's like, just imagine that. Now it's freaking hilarious, right? But I'm like, you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm going to be known around my entire industry as a guy who, like, stayed in a penthouse and had hookers and cocaine in my like. I thought my life was over. I really did. And here I am still.
Yeah. You survived, man. You survived, which is
I survived.
It's a good testament to you.
Yeah, I survived. I learned. I call it quits at a drink, maybe a drink and a half. I get a good night's sleep. And now I wake up and go to the gym. That's who I am now. Right.
These are the hard lessons. The hard lessons you learn. Yeah. I also be curious. It sounds like the CFO also took great pleasure in kind of bringing out his inner New Yorker for this this beatdown.
But so this story, by the way, there's a little piece that I also want to. So the guy Mark who left us went to a big creative agency in San Francisco that is still there, but it was the top of the game back in the late 90s, and he worked on a client that was in Southern Cal. So this guy's trouble, because I'm about to tell you a story where he got into more trouble. He worked on a client that was in Southern California, and there was a very small office in Southern California to service this client. It was kind of like just a small regional office, and this guy was a surfer, right? So he had arranged to have us, and he also had family from Southern California. So he had family down there. So he basically had a surfboard in Southern California. And he had arranged with one of the girls that was working in the LA office to kind of keep his surfboard in her place, right, for when he was making trips down to Southern California. Apparently she lived near the ocean. So there was one time apparently where he got down there and he wanted to get his surfboard, but she wasn't home. So he broke into her. He broke into her apartment.
Of course.
Yeah, of course he did. Right?
I gotta get my surfboard.
He broke into her apartment to get his surfboard so he could surf. And of course, that when she found out about it was a huge problem for her. And actually that got him fired from that job. So, and that was only like 8 months into that job. So this guy is, and he's still around in San Francisco. He's like he's a senior strategy guy at a very small agency in San Francisco, and
he just keeps getting
yeah, but he literally, he's got that, he's trouble, he's trouble. I mean, like, you don't break into someone's.
Well, you do if you have to go surfing. I mean, I'm only down in Southern Cal every once in a while. I can't not go. Come on. I mean, she's cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Paul learned his lesson from the School of Hard Knocks. When starting a new job as the boss, it's a delicate, and I mean delicate, balancing act between wanting to trust your team and being a bit skeptical, especially when it seems a little fishy. If you want more Not Suitable for Work or have a work story to tell, be sure to follow us on Facebook at Not Suitable for Work. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play, or wherever you find your podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, rate, and review. I'm Peter C. Diamond, and you can follow me on Twitter at Peter C. Diamond. Not Suitable for Work is produced by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Until next time.